Thrilled to be having our guest who we've had before back on today. Her name is Dr. Premela Deck. And we're actually doing something a little bit different. We are doing a brainstorming session with questions. Here she is. Let's pray you get on, Premela. Oh no. Let's see. We actually got to meet Premela live in
Yeah, it worked.
I know in person and did a little video about it like a week and a couple of days ago. And the more that conversations I have with you, Prem, the more I'm like, oh, you're so ideal for helping people in our community and in this situation because of your background, which I'm sure you'll introduce yourself in a minute. But before you even do, today we're going to be brainstorming questions for our course. It's called the Alienation Masterclass, How to Protect Your Relationship with Your Children in and Out of Court. And so we like to think of all kinds of things you can do, especially out of the legal system, to reconnect with a child who, for whatever reason, is resisting contact. And in our community, a lot of times it has to do with having a difficult co-parent. But anyway, so I figured before we start brainstorming, I would start with a situation that one of our clients is dealing with that is really, really universal and just get your comments on it. And then we'll get into the brainstorming because I think you just showing how you would approach this says more than I could say in a wonderful introductory description. All right. So anyway. All right, got this. So I was supposed to have my first professionally supervised visitation with my daughter this past weekend. She apparently arrived with her dad crying and upset. And unfortunately, the worker called the boss, and within half an hour, they had just left. And it was pretty devastating to have thought that I finally had an opportunity with professional support for a space to reconnect, that this could be facilitated without my ex's presence, control, and influence. But for whatever reason, the agency, were ill-equipped to calm her, reassure, and regulate her. And I can see how much she is continuing to play everyone rather than expecting a trained eye to see all this antagonism. It's been months, and this process continues to drain me emotionally and financially, while his grip becomes tighter and tighter on her reality, body, heart, and mind, which are slowly being eroded. Every time I think I'm getting somewhere, I'm blocked over and over again. I won't give up because I can't, but the hope bucket feels very low at the moment. So I picked this situation because, like I told you a minute ago before we got on, this is something that so many of our clients are experiencing. Little details are different, but the same thing, like finally they get a court order, they're supposed to have supervised visitation or therapy, and something like this happens. So what are your comments on this person's situation?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I think to your point, we see iterations of that case pretty regularly. And so it is case specific, but some high level things that I can give. I think that your inquiry there, they bring out a couple of issues. One is, who are the professionals that are involved? I do think it's important that you are employing professionals who have skill, not just in families who are going through family court, but in high conflict situations, and particular skill in working on cases with parent-child contact problems. So that's like one, who are the professionals?
Mm-hmm.
And then also to be mindful, this is a really weird field where we have court personnel, judges, lawyers sort of dictating a treatment plan, so a clinical intervention. And it's possible that the court orders or the attorney agreements or whatever aren't actually supported therapeutically or even going to be successful. So making sure that those two, I sometimes see them as parallel processes, right? You have this adversarial court setting from judges and from lawyers who went to law school. And then you have this clinical setting from therapists who don't speak the legal language. And you have these two trajectories where families are involved in court and now in therapy, and they can be getting conflicting information. So making sure that those two processes are really talking in the right direction. And in that instance, If the court order was simply show up at the agency and hope for the best, which it very well may have been, we're missing the boat because we're missing, what preparatory work was done. What was the child told? What was father in this instance told? What's the narrative that both parents are going to tell this child as to why they haven't seen, I think it was a mother in this instance, what they're going to see moving forward. Even just some simple things. I think that client in particular, their hypothesis is dad is poisoning this child, and that could be true. It could also be something like the child's never been to that supervision center before, and they're feeling nervous about that process, or they've never met the supervisor before, and they're feeling nervous about that process. That's going to be age dependent. Is this a 4-year-old or is this a 14-year-old? So there's so much information that we need to glean before I can really opine on kind of what's going on there. But I do think your client or potential client is not wrong that time is of the essence here, and really getting the right people involved as soon as possible and making sure that the process is set up for success. What are we telling the children? Why are we telling them? What's good enough? Like, you're never going to be able to have the exact same narrative, but what's enough that we can share with the children so that we can underscore for them that it is important for them to have both parents in their lives.
Yeah, and I love that. And I'm thinking already of a title, like having a process that's set up for success, because you're right. I mean, we see all kinds of vague orders where someone's thrilled that they finally get family therapy. And they think, I'm now going to be in a room with my child and I'll have the opportunity with a trained professional and we're going to start healing right away. And maybe in a couple of sessions, I'll get my custody back. And it doesn't happen that way usually.
No, and I think that that's also, it's almost like a misnomer that people think family therapy means I get in a room and we hash it out. And I think sometimes that's what the court orders almost make us believe that, and it sounds like in this case, I'm going to go to this agency, I'm going to see my child, and it's going to get better. And it can get better, but we need to do that preparatory work first. That usually family therapy is going to start with individual work with both parents. The custodial parent in that regard, what are they saying to the child? Do they have the parenting skills to draw the boundary of, nope, you're going. I know that you might not want to right now, but you're going. And here's what we're doing. Here's how we're getting there. And then for the receiving parent to be prepared, how are you going to sort of address a child? It feels lousy when the child walks in and says, I don't want to be here, but you need to be able to respond to that and respond to that well. So there's a lot of individual work that happens before we even have those sessions. And so unfortunately, it's possible that that potential client was kind of set up for failure here if they didn't have that preparatory work.
Yeah. So with that, why don't you now, Premela, officially introduce yourself, because you're already showing talk about different trajectories. You have expertise in both and then some.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a really niche area. It's family law. So we're dealing with families, we're dealing with children, we're dealing with mental health components, substance use, mental health issues, child development. So there's that clinical lens, and then there's the court lens. There's the legal standard of what's in the best interest of the child. And these two worlds sometimes butt heads. So I think where I contribute that's a little bit unique is I speak both of those languages. So I'm a family law attorney. I have an LICSW, which in Massachusetts is a clinical degree in social work. And then I also have my PhD in social work, where I studied high conflict family work.
Right. But you do parenting coordination, you do reunification therapy, you're an expert witness, you have this awesome building with these amazing stained glass windows that a lot of stuff happens in, and you involve other professionals in this process.
Yeah, so my company is SD Family Services. We're in Massachusetts. We have psychologists, social workers, lawyers. We have a retired judge, all on staff, because it takes all of those different vantage points really to look at these cases. And I think that that's important. But even in the example that you just gave, I'm often collaborating with other professionals. So I might be doing the family therapy, but I need to be collaborating with whoever's doing the supervised settings, so that I'm making sure that what I'm working on in session is being implemented in the supervised parenting time. So being able to talk across professions, being able to talk to people who may speak a different language or come at these cases from a different vantage point is really important.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, I'm thinking of the term case management or judicial oversight, where it is more of a collaborative approach in a team, and it's not just people operating in silos and not speaking to each other. Because like you said, you want to have a process that sets people up for success.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So now I want to get into some of the questions that we've gotten that I want to ask you later in our course, but I want to know if these are good questions. And if you want to answer any of them, that's fine. But so one of the things that just came up with was with this particular case is what should a parent, what should a child be told about supervised visitation? So it is important probably for people to know that there's a procedure. It's not like you just drop them off and say, here you go, you're going to be meeting with your parent that you haven't talked to in 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, the professional that you're working with may have a proposed narrative that they'd like to use, but generally we want to not put the child in the middle of the conflict. So you want the parents to both be able to echo a similar narrative. And it might be something like, it's important to mom and dad that you have relationships with both of us, or mom and mom, dad and dad, that you have relationships with both of us. And right now we're working with Sally over at, X community center to make sure that you have healthy and happy relationships with both of us right now.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Right now, like that's where we're at. You don't need to be able to answer, where is this going? Why are we here? You don't need to have that right now. You just need to be able to say that basic foundational level.
Yeah. But it sounds like there always should be something ahead of time, not just like, there you go, bye. Or
Well, and it
no, you
relieves
don't have
the
to.
child from being stuck in the middle. So if a child is feeling a loyalty bind, like if I enjoy this time with my mom in this example, am I betraying my dad? And so if you have dad and mom say the same thing, it's important to us that you have relationships with both of us. The subtext to that text is go have fun. You're allowed to do that. And that is everything. By removing that loyalty bind, you really can allow that relationship to heal.
Yeah. So I know one of the questions I'm going to be asking you later when we do our interview is, how do you deal with a parent who will not echo that same message? Like a problem parent who wants the opposite. They don't want the child to have a relationship with the other parent. They think the kid is theirs. They hate their ex and they want to cut them off. So yeah, that's going to be something we're going to ask. What about this also came in is someone has little kids and they're wondering if it's better to give space at transitions or not when a kid is crying. And you don't need to answer this now, Premela, but just tell me if these are good questions that you can answer later.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm hearing in that question is, how do I support my kid who's dysregulated at this transition session? Yes, we should absolutely answer that.
Okay. Another thing is people get messages from their exes that say things like, I'm concerned about our child's welfare and the child doesn't want to come to you. So I can't force her. She's traumatized. You have to fix your issues with her.
Yep.
Common message that you also see that we should address?
Yeah, common message. And it echoes a little bit about the earlier example. People can get into this sort of single factor analysis. You're the problem. It's really, those cases do exist. They do exist. There are cases where there is, one problematic parent. The vast majority, there's a lot going on. Maybe there's a problematic professional. Maybe there's a problematic co-parenting dynamic. Maybe there's a singular problematic parent. But the goal here is to kind of look at all of that, understand what's actually happening, and then, treatment plan towards what's actually happening. It's hard for me to say in all of these cases, this is what's happening, because that's just not the case. But I can say in all of these cases, these are sort of the things that we have to assess for, and then treatment plan and target where we're seeing issues.
Yeah. And I love that you noted how sometimes a professional or professionals can be problematic, because we've seen that too, but it's like nobody really talks about that. So we'll definitely get into what makes a problematic professional, even though I can already imagine. Okay, this is something I'm thinking about. How important is a parenting plan when it comes to preventing or minimizing rejection of another parent when there's been no documented abuse? Do you feel like, just overall, again, you don't need to get into a big answer, that parenting plans really have an impact on these cases?
So as therapists, it is a improper dual role for us to put a parenting plan in place. So sometimes court orders will say, at the therapist's discretion, then there could be overnights. Or when the therapist says it's appropriate, then there can be weekend parenting time. That's improper for us. We can't assess custody while treating the family. So in to that vein, it's important for us to already know what the parenting plan is or where we're hoping to go, like what the end goal is, and then we can treatment plan to get there. But we can't decide. It's a whole different process to do a child custody evaluation. It's different than to do therapy. So we can't do both roles.
Yeah. All right. Great. I'm like, I feel like each of these questions we could go off.
100%.
All right.
I think that's why this work that you're doing is so important. This is complicated. Knowing what a custody evaluation is, knowing what family therapy is, knowing what a parenting coordinator is, what supervised parenting time is, all of those things can be present in one case. And to expect families who aren't versed in this field to just know how to do it and to do it well isn't fair. And so the work that you're doing is so impactful to educate people about what to expect in this process.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and I know we both are thinking about Dr. Ben Garber and his concept of advanced orientation in terms of how families need to know what's happening to kind of reduce their fear, and they'll do better overall. But most people, nobody explains anything to them. They're terrified and they don't understand what's happening, and they're beating themselves up because many of them are extremely successful. We have loads of mental health professionals who are saying, I should know. And I'm thinking, you shouldn't know because you've never done this before.
Well, these are very unique circumstances. Most parents don't have to parent through a high conflict divorce with a child who's stuck in the middle and maybe resisting or refusing to see one of you. That is a very nuanced and rare circumstance. And I'm sorry for the people who are going through it, but they should not know how to deal with this. They should seek appropriate support.
Yeah. All right. Have you heard of the silver bullet strategy?
No.
Hitting. Oh my gosh. All right. So this comes up in our community all the time, including today, someone we just spoke to. So the silver bullet strategy is sometimes promoted by certain attorneys that tell women in particular that if they get a restraining order immediately when they file for divorce, they're going to have an upper hand in custody. So we've seen a lot of false allegations made to get temporary protective orders, and it ends up blowing up the family.
Yeah, I mean, I think that gets to our earlier conversation. When we're thinking about problematic professionals, I'm thinking about the attorneys, the therapists, the parenting coordinators. We need to make sure that everybody who's working on these cases share they come from different avenues and different vantage points, but like share the concrete goal of helping this family and not tearing them apart or making oodles of money off of them. These are humans and these are babies who have, 1 year of babyhood, 3 years of toddlerhood, like 9 years of childhood, and like 5 years of teenagehood. Like it's limited time, and we really need to make sure that we are hiring and employing professionals who are aligned in our viewpoint of healing the family. And it is something that I remind my clients regularly: is your attorney is your employee. And yes, get advice from them, help them, like they know what they're doing, but you also get to say, no, that's not how I want to go about this. I don't want to do it that way. And to remember that.
Yeah. So we actually, I know we just gave you a couple copies of our books, and I know you didn't read this, but coincidentally, we have a chapter in our first book about the client as consumer. And just like you said, it's your employee, but to think about it as this relationship, but you're the boss of the case. Yes, you need to follow certain advice, but still you get to make those decisions, because the only people who have to live with the consequences are you and your families.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So another thing that we see all the time, my ex is abusive and I don't feel safe co-parenting with them. What do I do?
Yep.
That's something we'll definitely talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another thing that people wonder is, what should I have prepared for meeting with a reunification therapist for the first time? And just generally, do people need to spend a lot of time getting ready for these, or is this more of a conversational thing when you meet with someone? For us, we say conversational.
Definitely more conversational. I think like super high level, because we'll get into it more later. It's like, what are your goals? Like, what are you hoping to see? So for me, I often ask, like, what would success look like to you? If this process was worth your time, money, and energy, what would success look like for you? And then, I am expecting you to be nervous about this process. Like, what can I do to help you feel reassured, to help you feel like you know what's coming down the pike? How do you receive information? Some people like to see things in writing. Some people are auditory processors. So getting to really know your therapist, like those are really important questions.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you're bringing this up because so much of what we want to do, both of us, is to educate people to be educated consumers so they know the right questions to ask. All right, another one, and this is one that's going to be like a big topic for later. My child is getting really old in the legal system. What, if anything, can I do? I was told that teenagers can't be forced to do anything. I know you have ideas on this one.
Yeah. I think I don't force even kids to do this. Like nobody should be forcing children to do this. It's really about how do we shift the paradigm so that the children are allowed to do this, so that the children are allowed to have healthy and happy relationships with parents. It could be working one-on-one with parents to, fix whatever parenting deficiency there was. It could be working on the co-parenting relationship. There are lots of things going on, but force is absolutely not a process in reunification therapy.
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people have different ideas, so I'm so glad that you're saying that because you're the expert on this topic. Another thing is focusing on the narrative to make a good impression to a therapist or other court professionals. People really, really worry about that. Is that something that's a big deal? Is proper presentation?
I think it's not fair to ask people to be their best selves when they're in the worst case scenario. So I don't think they should feel stressed over, am I preparing, am I, presenting this well? I do think it's worth spending some time thinking about those things. Like, what are my goals? What am I concerned about? Are there key kind of time points that I want to make sure that these people understand? But I do think it's a two-way interview. You should be, I'm interviewing you to see, is this a case that I can work on, that I think I can be successful on? But you should be interviewing me. Am I the therapist that you think can support you through this process? I'm expecting you to be vulnerable in this moment. So do you feel like I'm doing a good job about that? But I don't think it's fair to expect people to come, kind of pinned up and perfect.
Mm-hmm.
This
Yeah. Another thing that you and I talked about is one parent being responsible for paying for therapy. Like, oh, well, you're the problem, so you should pay for it all. And I know I always quote you on like, this is not a one parent problem.
Yeah, I don't think it's almost ever a one. I think that sets it up almost immediately for failure, because the reality is we should be saying that the children benefit when they have relationships with both parents. And of course, there are going to be some cases where that's not true. But for the vast majority, some relationship with both parents is what's best. And so if you as a parent believe that, you should be willing to fund it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, another one, and this came up in the example that we started with. I'm worried that my ex is going to manipulate the therapist. They're charming and charismatic. Is that something that people should really worry about?
Yeah, people can only lie for so long. Like you start to see the cracks. And so, yeah, I can be charmed. I can see it. I fall into their pattern. I actually tell clients, it's going to take me time to see the pattern. So people are on best behavior and it takes a little bit of time, but then you start to see those things come out. So yeah, I think it's a valid concern that people are going to feel like the wool is being pulled over their eyes, but people can't lie that long. True colors come out.
Yeah, that's good. I'm skimming ahead because I'm like, I know we said like a few minutes and are starting to answer some of these questions, but I can't help it. Another thing that you mentioned, this word, a parentectomy, which I think is, what's a parentectomy? This you can answer.
Cutting out a parent. And sometimes that's done because a parent is really harmful to the child. And sometimes that's done because a parent was causing harm by cutting out a fit parent.
Yeah, and so that's something we're definitely going to be talking about also with parentectomies. And then when might it be time to give up?
Yeah.
That's really a heartbreaking thing. But I know the question came in, how can I show that I'm giving up on therapy, but not on my child? I'm not abandoning my child. Because we always think about it's not just right now, it's the future and the child's narrative.
So just like high level, we usually, when we have to have those sad cases where we're stepping back, we try to do something called breadcrumbs. What's a way that you can, on a semi-regular and consistent basis, show that you haven't given up on them? It may be that you're stepping back on therapy, but it could be sending a card once a month. And it shouldn't say anything meaty in it. Just, thinking about you, hope you're doing well. And that's it. And if you send that card every single month for 3 years, you've never abandoned your child.
Yeah. And there's so many other things that people can do, but sometimes it involves you not reaching out to the child. Sometimes it does, but we'll get into that later. And then this is interesting. How do you balance your rights versus what will be successful in repairing the relationship with the child? So, you've got those two trajectories, the legal and the therapeutic. People are often like, this is my rights, but then there's also, in many states, the Children's Bill of Rights.
Yeah, so not even just the legal and therapeutic, which I do think are sometimes at odds, but like parental rights versus the best interests of the children, which can sometimes be at odds. So yeah, it's a conversation.
Yeah. I'm finding it so hard to balance not jumping right into these. Okay, so I think I'm going to hold off on the other stuff because I have pages of notes to engage your big deck energy. But anyway, so I think what we'll do is stop for now, and this is like a little teaser of some of the things that we're going to be talking about at length later, and hopefully this course will be ready in July, we're aiming for. But you and I, Premela, will be meeting like a few times because we have a number of ideas, and you gave me some ideas to do some webinars in terms of how to ask the court properly for court orders. Like you said at the beginning, like you want to be set up for success. So to have things very specific in your requests or the relief that you're asking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on today. I'm glad it worked.
Yay. Bye, everyone.
I'll talk to you soon. Bye.